What is happening?
Broadcasting live from the Zimmer Communications World Headquarters.
Great news for the American people.
This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri with Branden Rathert, featuring Stephanie Bell, News Director Brian Houseworth, John Marsh, and Hannah, the producer.
This is why we listen to you.
Get ready, pal. And now, here's your host, Branden Rathert.
Name me a single objective we've ever set out to accomplish that we've failed on. Name me one in all of our history. Not one. It's never been a good bet to bet against America. And it's still not a good bet today. This is still a country that believes in honesty, decency, and integrity.
Where do we start, John? Let's start with Joe talking about honesty and integrity. That'd be like Hitler talking about diversity or something. Or do we start with the things that we're not accomplishing? Where do we start, man?
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Wherever you would like to.
That's right. The economy, the White House continues. They continue to lie. By the way, I'm going to try to settle down a little bit. I went to another doctor yesterday, blood pressure issues. And I know people have said this, but like I do, I get worked up. I get angry about this stuff. And I know I get to shouting sometimes and whiny. Sometimes I sound like Jerry Seinfeld. Why?
I know you always say we don't pound our fist on the desk for 3 hours every day. Sometimes when you get a little worked up, we kind of do.
I've sat here and said, dang it, I don't pound my fist on the desk every day like most, and I pound my fist while I'm doing it. So I'm going to try to be frustrated.
Do we just need to do a moment of meditation? Just deep breaths.
For a minute, let's all be quiet.
Well, not silent, please.
All right.
I'll be getting a phone call from the engineers.
So I'm going to try to settle down a little bit here. The White House continues to lie to us this morning about the economy.
Those turds.
Thank you, Hannah. the economy. They say, the economy is good. This the 1 year of the Inflation Reduction Act. You know what the Inflation Reduction Act doesn't do, Marsh? Doesn't reduce inflation. But
well, why did they call it that then?
Again, it's like Hitler talking diversity. Consumer Price Index released this month showed inflation rose 3.2% in July from the previous year. The report also showed an increase in the price of consumer goods. June, we can also start what haven't we accomplished? How about the southern border and the influx of people coming into our country illegally, and a lot of the crimes, human smuggling, fentanyl, that makes its way to mid-Missouri. As a matter of fact, illegal immigration, such a big deal right now that there's now Democrat Party infighting in New York between Governor Kathy Hochul and New York City Mayor Eric Adams, because Eric Adams is frustrated because he has a sanctuary city. He's frustrated that illegal immigrants are coming to his sanctuary city. That's called hypocrisy. So when you're a hypocrite, I think you garner very little respect from people, not just on a political level, but even on a personal level. If you're a hypocrite, like if you say one thing, for example, let's say you sit here and say, we don't bang on the desk. That's not what we do. And you bang on the desk.
Rein it in.
What am I doing? I am being
a hypocrite.
A hypocrite. Guilty as
We're trying to keep it zen this morning.
Mellow.
So,
meanwhile, the president's obsessing on ice cream again.
Oh, my goodness. If you have kids or little grandkids, you got to hear then what he said prior to talking about how great America is. Welcome into the show. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri. My name is Branden Rathert. There is Brian Houseworth.
So good to see you, sir.
We're taking it easy on the blood pressure this morning.
Good.
My doctor says, dude, you got to calm down. Seriously, I had a 2-hour visit with the doctor yesterday. It was actually Dr. Tobler, but
Branden, very important, and I'm glad you're doing that because I struggle with the same thing, and it's a serious issue.
Wait.
And it can cause side effects.
Have you heard Houseworth ever get angry? When he does, woo!
Isn't Dr. Tobler an OBGYN?
But he's still a doctor.
You take them where you can get them.
I asked for an internship, and he said,
okay.
Actually, Tobler's going to be here 7:10 this morning. I think one of the things we might talk about law enforcement.
Sure.
We might, and I think an important thing, especially you talk about men's health issues, second opinions and being an advocate for yourself. These things are really, really important. I think Randy's going to come by 7:10 this morning.
Good.
We'll ask him about that. But I want you to hear, if you have kids or little grandkids, man, you got to hear what Joe said before he lied to us about how great things are. There's Mr. John Marsh. How's your blood pressure this morning?
Well, I'm on meds for it, like always.
Yeah, and producer Hannah, big wedding snafu. We should maybe talk about on a Feel Good Friday, maybe, because I don't want your blood pressure to get worked up. How are you this morning, Hannah?
Namaste.
Very nice. All right. Here's the president of the United States yesterday before he lied to us.
And I want to say one thing to your children. I know some really great ice cream places around here. And Daddy owes you. So talk to me afterwards.
Ew.
That's beyond ooh.
What the hell?
Mint chocolate chip.
Wow. Hey, kids.
That's creepy.
That is not the image there. By the way, you can text us 874-9390. I'm serious. And I'm going to play this again. I want you to hear this one more time because I hope we complain about all this stuff, progressives and liberals and what they're doing and their social BS and give money to everybody and all this stuff. And what can we do about it? And I think one of the things that we can realistically do to affect real change in your life, the life of Americans, we can highlight in factual, polite, non-high blood pressure inducing ways by simply pointing out facts to your friends who vote for people like Joe Biden, to your friends who give Joe Biden approval ratings, which continue to sink. 36% of the country, a little over a third, approves of the way that Biden is handling the economy. And I want to know, who is that 36%? Is it China? Because of all the money that they've been making because of Biden? Who is going, yes, Joe is doing a real, and I'm serious. Matter of fact, the other day when Governor Parson signed the I-70 bill, I like David Tyson Smith, local rep. He's a Dem, and I asked him, we have this idea we've been talking about for a while, and I asked him about this. I'm like, David, would you come in one morning, hang out for us a half hour, and we're not going to argue. We're not going to battle. We're not going to match wits, because if we match wits, I'm going to win. I didn't say that to him, not to his face anyway. But I said, come in for half an hour and talk about why you believe this way. I said, I promise it'll be a friendly conversation. He says he's willing to do that.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
And he, to his credit, he's willing to do that. And also for a lot of our constituents, including a lot of our Republican listeners, he is your representative. So if there is an issue in Jeff City, and a lot of the stuff that affects them is not even going to be political, but they need some help, it's good for them to get to know him. And he's always been willing to come on.
So is what we can do, I think, to affect real change. Because how many of us, whether you watch Fox, you read Breitbart, you talk to your friends, how many of we all complain, but what do we do about it? I honestly believe one of the things we can do is, number one, you can encourage people like, well, check out Wake Up Mid-Missouri, for example, and listen to them explain facts. And when Branden gets real cranky, ignore that, okay? He's right in what he's saying. Ignore the old angry white guy stuff. But we can share these facts, I think. And, man, if we do it in polite ways, because people get onto the cable news and they debate, that does nothing. It's a boxing match. It does not affect change. But if we have these conversations very politely, I think potentially we can affect change. And so you can tell people like, so, Joe Biden, one of the things you can say about the president, he is very consistent when it comes to little kids.
And ice cream.
And ice cream. We have seen him on numerous occasions inappropriately touch young women, sniff, not even young women, kids, sniff kids' hair. And when the president, what he just said, the image I get is the stereotypical thing we heard in the 70s, an old man driving in that old Chevy van offering to hand out candy to little kids.
I know some really great ice cream places around here. And Daddy owes you.
Daddy owes you. That is, and I wish you could see Hannah's face right now, which you can always see what happens behind the scenes here on the show.
Yeah, let me clean up my puke over here.
And then go to YouTube.
Yeah, Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Wow, stunning.
I still think he is And Congressman Luetkemeyer, obviously, who's in Sedalia this morning, doesn't think he will run. He made that comment. You did a great job really clarifying what the congressman said last week, Brandon, when he followed it up. But if he does run, I really believe this. I believe President Biden will be tough to beat. It doesn't matter if it's DeSantis, Trump, regardless of Trump's issues with these indictments, because he believes that they're political. Whether he had them or not, I still think because they're just. If you look at the electoral map, it'd be tough. No, it would take a couple states to switch. So it's certainly doable for Republicans.
I'm willing to bet. I'll go. There's only one bet above the $1 million bet.
No, not that one.
And the Speedos in front of the Capitol.
I'm gonna puke again.
If Joe Biden and Donald Trump are in the November 2024 election, I don't think it's going to happen for either one of them. I really don't believe that. And I wish Trump would win. I wish he would. I don't believe it's going to happen. I haven't made the bet yet, but I would walk in front of the Capitol in Speedos if they are both in the. That's how shocked I would be. Seriously, if they both, and they're both leading the polls. We're going to do some poll numbers coming up in the daily DC rundown, but let's move forward because there's some stuff out of Georgia.
Please.
There's some stuff out of Georgia. But the other thing that we can highlight here that you can share with your friends and your Democrat friends across the aisle. By the way, text. Why is he talking like that to kids? That's creepy. Don't go near my kids with that weird talk. Who is our president? I hear you, man, and thank you for the text. The other thing we can point out is the way progressives behave. It's not about the betterment of America. It's about the betterment of them. So when they get on TV and get gleeful about like Trump getting indicted, like we heard from Hillary Clinton and Rachel Maddow.
Oh, I can't believe this. Yeah.
They were like tailgating. Oh, I can't believe this. It's finally happening. Like she's getting ready to watch the Chiefs in the Super Bowl again, John. And then Claire, same thing. Check this out. Our former U.S. Senator, Claire McCaskill.
The good news is we finally have Rudy Giuliani indicted. Woohoo! That makes me very happy.
Woohoo! Because a guy has been indicted. In one breath, they say this is a dark moment in American history. And then in the next breath, Claire McCaskill, a former United States senator and a very progressive, liberal, icky Democrat.
Indicted. Woohoo!
Is going,
And the
woohoo!
Kansas City area prosecutor to boot.
Yeah. Blows me away. Those are the stories I hope you tell your friends. All right, coming up a few minutes. I don't like this, Hannah. I think I prefer life with high blood pressure. All right, coming up.
No, you do not.
Coming up, Daily DC Run. By the way, Steph's going to be joining
The DA has asked to try this in March. First of all, there is an ongoing racketeering trial right now that the DA's office is handling in Georgia. I understand what the DA is doing.
I understand what she's doing, too, there, John. She's campaigning for her next big office. She really is. Incidentally, I think context, the C word, is important here. The context to that is CNN. Two legal analysts saying on CNN. So the prosecutor in Georgia, she wants the Trump trial, she wants to start March 6th. CNN all over this saying, no, there's just no way that's happening. And again, it just goes back to, John, I think it's just more, that's proof. See, we talk about this proof that we can share with our Democrat progressive friends. You see, she's just campaigning. There's no realistic way that this person who went through college, who went through law school, is a district attorney in Fulton County, Georgia. John, there can be no way that somebody with some book smarts, I won't say she's intelligent, I will say she has some book smarts. There's no way she could think that this could go to trial March 6th. How is this possible, man?
Well, we've got 3 other prosecutors with the same mindset on this stuff.
Yeah, all running for bigger office. That's getting us into today's Daily D.C. Rundown. By the way, Steph's going to be here 7:35. Live report, stay fair. The importance of how politics are playing out there. Okay, mail order access to a drug used in the most common form of abortion in the United States would end under a federal appeals court ruling issued. Now, it's not going to take effect until the Supreme Court weighs in. The decision by 3 judges on the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in Narlands overturned part of a lower court ruling that would have revoked the FDA's 23-year-old approval of the drug, but it did leave intact part of the ruling that would end the availability of the drug by mail, allow it to be used through only the 7th week of pregnancy rather than the 10th, and require that it be administered in the presence of a physician. Also in your Daily DC Rundown, the U.S., Japan, South Korea expected to announce plans for expanded military cooperation on ballistic missile defenses and technology development in the face of growing concern about North Korea's nuclear program. When the country's leaders gather at Camp David for a summit tomorrow on a Feel Good Friday, it's kind of important because, John, as we've monitored, you and I both being military brats, being Air Force brats specifically, we've monitored over the years the growing presence, the growing threats from North Korea and their craziness, and it's important that Japan and South Korea and the U.S. all on board, really, for, in effect, for the security of the U.S. Summit is the first that Biden has held during his presidency at Camp David. Remember, Japan colonized the Korean Peninsula from 1910 to 1945. Suspected architect of the September 11th, 2001 attacks and his fellow defendants may never face the death penalty under plea agreements now under consideration to bring an end to their more than decade-long prosecution. And this comes a year and a half after military prosecutors and defense lawyers began exploring a negotiated resolution to the case. The prosecution of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and 4 others that were being held in Guantanamo Bay had been troubled by repeated delays and legal disputes, especially over the legal ramifications of the interrogation under torture that the men initially underwent while in CIA custody. No trial date has been set. Obviously, relatives of the more than 3,000 Americans killed that day ain't real happy. Call me crass or whatever, but when you're torturing people like this, I don't care. I really don't. And what they did to our country, I do not care about torture. Other news this morning, President Joe Biden has devoted the past several weeks to lying about positive impacts of his policy. The majority of Americans still ain't buying it, according to polling. Here's what shocks me about this number that I'm about to share with you here. It shocks me that there's this many people that think Joe Biden is doing a good job with the economy. 36% of U.S. adults approve of Biden's handling of the economy. That's slightly lower than 42%.
Independently wealthy or something, apparently.
Unbelievable. Coming up just a few minutes from now here on the show.
us to send us a link and said for more details, go to the link, and the link only says your show has been removed from Apple Podcasts. Well, we got that one, dummy. This is absolutely freedom of speech. There's nothing that we have said that would warrant any removal. This is huge.
That's Glenn Beck, who hosts a show on one of our stations here on the platform. So he was removed from Apple Podcast. As a matter of fact, just got an email from his from Glenn Beck's The Blaze. He says senators and others now rallying behind him after Apple Podcast removed his show. Now, right now, as far as he is saying right now, he says we have no idea why. Haven't we've been bumped from some of those things before, haven't we, Hannah?
Yeah, thanks to you.
What did I do?
Well, we got like our first strike from YouTube over something that then Congressman Billy Long had said.
That's right.
And it was just a warning, right? We got flagged for misinformation. I tried to appeal it, got denied, whatever. Brandon thought it was so funny that happened.
I didn't think it was funny.
He continued the next day to keep playing the soundbite of Billy Long saying the thing that got us in trouble over and over again. And YouTube booted us off for like 2 weeks. We got put in like timeout.
Was it about the stolen election of 2020? Was that what he was talking about?
I think so.
And so we were highlighting, hey,
alleged
stolen election. By the way, Mike Lindell, my pillow guy, makes an incredible pillow, by the way. He was in Missouri yesterday in Springfield he's doing this summit now, and he was talking about all this proof about the stolen election. And listen, I get it. There's a lot of people that still believe the election was stolen. Unfortunately, there has not been proof to prove those claims. There just hasn't. Also, there was not enough proof to convict O.J. Simpson. So keep that in mind. But Mike Lindell was here in the Show Me State yesterday, and he said, well, we're not going to present any more evidence. We have enough evidence, but watch this. And then he had a big snafu, and people are laughing at him. But yeah, it was election stuff that got us booted the first time, wasn't it? And it wasn't what we were saying. It's what a guest was saying.
Right. And the timing of it was really inconvenient because we had a Facebook and YouTube only broadcast planned for that week. So your plan kind of backfired on you.
Yeah, that was harsh, man. And this is important because you talk about journalism and what we see, especially with the news outlets, why that matters, what's happening to Glenn Beck, whether you're a Glenn Beck fan or not, the stuff is important. Welcome into the show. It's Wake Up Mid-Missouri. There is John Marsh.
Good morning.
It's producer Hannah.
Hello.
Stephanie Bell is back in studio tomorrow. Right now she is at the State Fair getting ready for the big breakfast. She's here 7:35. Political implications of what happens there. It's actually kind of a big deal. Also, can you name just something is spinning around? We might chat with Randy Tobler about this 7:10. Here's a question for you. Can you name one type of planned surgery that a child could get without the approval of a parent? Can you name one? And you don't have to answer out loud, but think about that. Can you name a surgery that a child under the age of 18 could get without the consent of their parent? We're going to cover that coming up at 7:10. And do we sound a little bit mellower this morning? If you're tuning in to Wake Up Mid-Missouri and you're going, man, why so quiet? Well, wait till you hear.
Switch to decaf, I guess, huh?
Yeah, well, I went and saw Body of Health, and because I'm having blood pressure stuff, health, 52-year-old dude stuff, and I was told, hey, you got to settle down. And when you get on your show and say, and I don't bang on the desk and complain about Democrats,
you're lying to yourself.
I'm being hypocritical. Glad you were here. But here's another interesting story as it relates to news outlets. By the way, Glenn Beck on one of our stations weekdays, noon o'clock, right after the Gary Nolan show, which you can hear here. Another story, this out of Kansas. And I love what journalists nationwide, local journalists, not journalists on a national level, not really, the big networks, but newspapers and television stations and even some strong radio groups across America backing what happened in Kansas. There was a newspaper that was rated small, local newspaper. And this happened at the Marion County. This is in Marion County, Kansas. Apparently, there was a search warrant. Police go and storm a small local newspaper, and it made news, and people are like, you cannot do that because, by the way, when you are as a news outlet, you enjoy some extra protections as it relates to unreasonable searches and seizures from law enforcement. And
it's called FOIA.
That's right. That's exactly right. These police, they bust into this woman's house. The owner, let me say the former owner of the newspaper, because she has died in the past few days.
Oh.
Because of, you know what it was? Stress. Because of them, her newspaper being raided. Joan Meyer was the 98-year-old co-owner of the Marion County Record. She died 2 days following the raid. Her son said these are Hitler tactics and something has to be done. But basically, the gist of the story is there's a new police chief in the area, and apparently there had been accusations that his previous job, there was harassment. He was getting ready to get fired. And then there was another, apparently a resident of the town went to city council and said the newspaper got obtained illegally information about her drunk driving arrest. She was lying. But you see, when we talk about the feds who go after Trump, and we say these things matter because they're not talking points. They matter because you think about a small rural town somewhere here in mid-Missouri, and you know, a guy sitting at the coffee shop happens to play football with the sheriff in that county. Hey, sheriff, you know, my neighbor down the road, his dogs get up in my business. Can you go rattle his cage a little bit? These things happen. That is what's happening. Instead of happening at a coffee shop, you know, in Randolph County, Missouri, it's happening on a federal level, and that's a fact. We see that happening, and this is why, you know, it's something that we should be concerned about. Anyhow, they went yesterday and returned all of the information, and this police department apparently is in big trouble. But you can see how people were leveraging law enforcement because they thought that somebody was printing. And by the way, the newspaper never ran with the story about the allegations of the chief and his former job in the set. They never ran with that story, but they did run with the story about this woman who got a DUI. They printed nothing false, is what it was. And we see this with progressives. They didn't like what was printed. They didn't like the facts. And so what did they do? Somebody leveraged law enforcement. Somebody leveraging the Department of Justice to go after President Trump, except they leveraged a police chief in Marion County, Kansas, to go after the newspaper because they did not like what they were printing. And John, this is, you know, as a journalist, man, you've been doing, between you and Houseworth, 60 years of journalism in mid-Missouri. How does that, how do you react to that? Does that make your blood pressure go up?
Well, you know, we're not defenders of the Post-Dispatch, but think back, a year or so ago when they printed the story on the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, had the data breach, and then everybody from the governor on down was saying they committed a criminal offense and they were going to end up in court until Cole County Prosecutor Locke Thompson said, no, I don't think they broke the law on this. They were just revealing what they found in an internet search.
Yeah. And so these things matter, not just on the level of journalism, but seriously, see, these things could happen to you. Do you think this now 98-year-old deceased former newspaper owner who'd owned this newspaper for a long time, do you think she's, these kinds of things that will never, what's happening to Trump and the Department of Justice and how they go after people, that will never happen here in Marion County, Kansas? And it did happen. Task Force One, Missouri Task Force One, based here in mid-Missouri, Boone County. State Rep Cherie Tolson-Reich been instrumental in the years securing funding for that. We have 4 cadaver dogs in Hawaii right now. Over 100 people have died in the wildfires, deadliest fire basically in modern U.S. history. So there's a lot of resources going over there. And I just wanted to pass this along real quick, but Raising Cane's restaurant today, 15% of their profits, 15% of the profits today going to be helping the folks in Hawaii. And hopefully they're going to be okay. And that's interesting, too, because what's happened there with the power company, people saying the power company knew this crap was happening. They didn't shut down the power. And, of course, what we've seen afterwards is, again, we see a lot of these national news outlets. You don't let a tragedy, you don't let it go to waste. See, it's climate change. Well, what has changed where that fire is they used to do cattle grazing and stuff like that there. Think about Clinton, back in the 90s. Oh, we're not going to thin out the forest anymore. And we saw massive, devastating wildfires. Same thing there. One of the things they quit doing was cattle grazing. And then because of that, more grasses grew, and they even got some non-invasive grasses. And then you happen to have some winds from a hurricane. That's not weather, according to progressives. That's every time it snows, John, every time it gets above 100 degrees, every time it rains heavily. It's not weather, it's climate change, and that is a fundamental misunderstanding on the part of these folks. One of the other things we're doing this morning is kind of interesting. Andy Humphrey, cousin Andy, he's going to be here. New dad, Andy Humphrey. We should ask him about that, man. First time you're a parent, what a beautiful thing. He's going to be here.
Him and his wife brought the baby in last week, and there was a slight mishap while the baby was here.
Did they drop it?
No, she might have had a blowout while in her car seat.
The wife or the baby?
The baby.
Just making sure.
Cousin Andy.
He's here at 8:10. NIL, listen, I don't like this NIL with colleges and universities and the way it's tied in, the way it's worked. I really don't. However, I do believe, listen, if you want to hire a panhandler, sorry, I'm trying to settle down this morning.
An urban outdoorsman.
Body of Health told me yesterday, 2-hour visit, Brandon, you got to settle down, your blood pressure.
I've been telling you that for free.
Right? But it's
for
like
years.
With the Red Fridays.
Dr. Hannah.
The other thing I need to do is learn to listen more. So anyhow, trying to settle down this morning. But Andy's going to be here. And I believe, listen, if you want to hire a panhandler from 63 and 70 to be a spokesperson from your business, you can hire whoever you want. And that includes a college athlete. What I don't like is how closely it's tied into recruiting efforts, even though it's benefiting Mizzou football right
Big
now.
time.
Yeah, I don't like it. All right, coming up 5 minutes from now, one of the things we're going to be covering here on the show, man, kids, 500 new students back at Lincoln University. They're moving in at Mizzou. They're moving in and all over the place. The first piece of advice that you might want to give college freshmen when they think about a credit card, that's coming up 5 minutes from now.
Namaste.
S&P 500 down 34.
We'll look at your futures coming up at 8:25 in the morning bell. We do that like just 5 minutes before the stock market actually opens. It's kind of cool. The other thing we're going to be doing in the morning bell at 8:25 usually is just business news with a little twist only Stephanie Bell can give you. We cover some interesting topics. I don't know if did anybody see Target earnings for the month? Yeah. And
woke will come home to haunt you in the pocketbook. Just ask Intel.
Yeah. Meanwhile, earnings report for Budweiser, not good there. And it continues. We've been talking about Budweiser, man. We're going on, like, what is this now, 5-6 months almost, and it's not getting better. And the
billions they've lost.
And those are facts, all right? People are going, all right, we've had enough. Target is like, yeah. And to Target's credit, okay? Because you remember what happened in June and all the crazy stuff they were selling. They paid for it, and Target is admitting. They're doing what Budweiser is not doing, and they're admitting. They're saying, yep, it was because of that. Target, they get some points for at least admitting, because people continue to say, as a matter of fact, we'll hear from an analyst that's saying, listen, there's so much power in admitting, hey, I made a mistake. It's called ownership, and they won't do it. Good morning. Welcome to the show. It's Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Branden Rathert, John Marsh, producer Hannah, Stephanie Bell, back in studio tomorrow. She's actually going to be joining us 7:35. The importance of what happens politically at the state fair. It's not all concerts and corn dogs and carnival rides. There's a lot happening there. Steph is here at 7:35. What CNN says about the likelihood of a Trump March trial in Georgia. Spoiler alert. Even CNN is like, man, lady, you got to quit campaigning. Credit cards. We have thousands of college students from Fulton to Lincoln University. 500 new students at Lincoln University. John Mosley and the crew there. People like Misty Nunn and what they have done for that school is just incredible. Mizzou, obviously. A lot of students going back there. And then credit cards. And I think they've tried to tamp down a little bit on these credit card companies going and hanging out on campus. Hannah, when you went to Mizzou, did you see that kind of stuff out there? The credit card companies out there on campus trying to peddle this stuff?
You know, I was prepared to see a lot of that. I don't know if I ever saw any of them, to be honest.
I remember them.
Yeah.
Everybody warned me about it before I went to school, but I can't recall ever seeing anybody set up.
The biggest piece of advice that you might want to pass along to the kids when they think about getting a credit card, biggest piece of advice for me is what I would tell my kid when he was 18. If he'd come to me and say, Dad, I want a credit card, my number one piece of advice would be, don't. That would be number one. But the second most important piece of advice that I think that I could offer as a grandfather would be to, okay, man, but this is how it works. Because I think back, Hannah, how old were you when you got your first credit card? 18, 19?
Somewhere in there.
Yeah. Remember the first thing that you bought on your credit card?
It's probably something boring like gas and groceries because I told myself that's all I was going to use the credit card for.
Let me ask you this. As a young 18, 19-year-old woman, was it kind of exciting?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It was nice to be able to swipe and not see the money come out of your bank account.
Marsh, what was it like for you, bud?
I'm thinking maybe pizza.
Yeah. For
Something
me,
real exotic on it.
Right? But it was that excitement, like, oh, because I felt like as a kid, I felt like I've got some freedom now. It was like when I turned 16, I had the freedom to drive. Now I'm 18. Now I've got the freedom to spend freely. The challenge was paying.
You got to pay it back.
You got to pay it back. First thing, I'm almost embarrassed to admit this. If you remember the first thing that you ever bought with your credit card, your very first credit card when you were a kid, might be a fun text, 874-9390 if you're thinking about it. First, I'm embarrassed to admit this. First thing I bought, famous bar at I-55 in Lindbergh in St. Louis, South County Mall.
Yeah.
I bought a pair of Guess jeans.
Because nothing comes between Branden and his Calvins, right?
And some Doc Marten boots.
Oh, boy.
Boy, that's vintage.
Yeah, first thing I got his show. Marsh.
Sir.
Wow.
Wow.
All right. Hannah, you should, if you watch our video feed on Facebook or on our YouTube channel, go to YouTube Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Hannah, you would have think Hannah has just eaten an onion because her facial expression at hearing that. Seriously. And I want to bring in Tobler. Randy, this is not a talking point. It really isn't. This is a fact. Joe is consistent. Man, you hear that. How does that strike your heart?
Man, all I can think of is creepy. I got to go take a shower. I mean, it's just, you know what it makes me think of is this guy's whole persona, because of the many video clips, the audio clips, just is nothing but creep. And then you think about the money laundering scheme and the influence peddling. But can you imagine on its face those words, if spoken by, let's say, Ronald Reagan? Well, kids, hey, I love ice cream. How about you? Make sure your parents take you to the ice cream park. Everyone would say, oh, that's America's granddad, right? So there's nothing wrong with talking with kids about ice cream. But, man, when Joe does it, holy cow. Oh, that's creepy.
And I want to play this one more time, Hannah, if it's cool, because when people go into work this morning, I hope you share this story. By the way, in a very polite, we're trying to reduce blood pressure this morning.
Yeah.
Staying very zen.
All around.
Low-fat ice cream, Mr. President.
Right?
Sugar-free.
Randy Tobler, as you know, if you listen to the Tobler Show, you know, even though it's not central to what Randy does, he also happens to be a physician, and he has a direct primary place called it's Body of Health, Direct Primary Care, and I happened to go there yesterday because as a 52-year-old dude, I needed a second opinion on something. First time in my life that I've ever done that, actually. Let me rephrase that. Second time I've ever asked for a second opinion and paid for it instead of just bugging my doctor friends.
I liked the narrative better that you were going to see Dr. Tobler as the OBGYN.
Oh, no. They'll have none of that.
I got to tell you something, yes, before we'll replay this audio again from Biden, because when you go into work, I want you to be able to speak in factual terms, and I want you to hear, okay? If you're, a local elected Democrat, whatever, I want you to hear what the president is saying when it comes to kids. That is such a graphic image, what he said there. It is like the stereotypical old man driving a 1973 Chevy van holding Snicker bars driving down the street going, hey, kid, you want a candy bar? It is no different. But I did go, Randy happens to be a doctor. It's not central to his show, Body of Health Direct Primary Care, and he happens to be an OBGYN. And the exam chair, Hannah, had stirrups on it. And it was kind of interesting. Oh, and then, Randy, what do you call it when you rub the pregnant chick's belly with that magic wand? What do you call that?
Yeah, we did. Well, we did an ultrasound. We have a little wireless ultrasound device. So
and you'll be happy to know
the
results are negative. I am not pregnant, Hannah.
Oh, thank goodness.
But anyhow, the point.
Should we readdress your pronouns this morning?
We try to keep up with the tribes and be diverse, you know. So however people identify, we can take care of them. You know?
Well, and I'll tell you, and Randy can confirm this. The science, the fact confirmed that I am indeed a dude, regardless of what I might think. The science confirmed that I am a guy. All right, Body of Health, Randy Tobler, and that is Randy's business, but I mention it because it's important health stuff, second opinions, and taking care of yourself. I just want you to know that. Biden, one more time.
And I want to say one thing to your children. I know some really great ice cream places around here. And Daddy owes you. Okay? So talk to me afterwards.
That's beyond insane.
That's chilling.
It is.
It's chilling.
Daddy owes you. Talk to me afterwards. That's the guy driving in the old van, handing out Snicker bars while he's driving down Missouri Boulevard saying, hey, kids, you want some candy? Welcome into the show. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri. I am Branden Rathert. There's Mr. John Marsh.
Good morning.
There's producer Hannah.
Hello.
Big wedding snafu for Hannah. If we don't get to this today, are you willing to share tomorrow on a Feel Good Friday of all days what happened?
Yeah, hopefully by tomorrow I have a resolution.
I hope so too. This is kind of a big deal. Hannah, of course, getting married over Labor Day weekend at the big tractor festival in Iowa. So, anyhow, Stephanie Bell is back in studio tomorrow. She's actually joining us 7:35. The importance of what happens at the State Fair, and of course, seriously, we talk about great presidents. Ronald Reagan probably tops the list, and great moments in presidential history happened. And John, were you at the State Fair with Reagan in '84?
Yes, indeed.
And so we want to revisit some of that with John because it was truly an incredible event. Let's start with this. A group has sued the Washington governor. There's a bill that allows sex change surgery for minors without parental consent. That's horrifying. And I think more of these parents, I think a lot of these parents really, they should be criminally charged. That is my opinion. But I want to ask, since we know that you are a doctor, and I'm just curious, how many planned surgeries, I'm not talking an emergency surgery, a planned surgery, how many surgeries are there that a child, somebody under the age of 18, could go to a doctor and say, I need this surgery without parental consent? How many surgeries can you do that with?
Well, I tell you, it varies by state, and I think among them would be in some states you can, if under certain circumstances, if you're married, if you're living independently, you can have an abortion without a parental consent. Not in Missouri, of course. But the thing that came to mind as you were talking about this, Brandon, was IUDs. Placing an IUD in a woman's uterus, which is an office procedure, carries very little risk, but it can happen, is considered part of contraception services. And actually, the law is confusing and frankly, very threatening for docs in this state and others, because the Supreme Court has said that you can't prohibit doctors from offering contraception services in the broad sense. But, I mean, in a sense, it's not a surgery, but it's a procedure. You're putting a device inside a body cavity,
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something that generally it's even if it is, one of those gray areas, most physicians and I think most states agree that, if that is a minor's right for reproductive counseling and for, birth control pills. And yes, even IUDs are generally considered acceptable. Where it gets into the rub and where I've always talked with patients are like, in this instance, it's like, look, please try to have such a relationship with your parents, and actually most teens do these days. That's one thing about our open society as far as our, just the way we're freely talking about things on social media and other things. Because guess what? Mom may get the bill for that. Or if you get an infection, which is a rare thing, or if the IUD happens to, perforate through the uterus and then you need a surgery to fix it or something happens, rare instances. Mom and dad are going to find out about it, and that is going to be ugly for everyone. That's not going to be good. So generally, I've had the fortunate happenstance of being able to work with patients and have conversations and encourage them to have conversations. But no, you're right. I mean, in general, you certainly can't do a sterilization procedure on a minor without either their parent or their guardian if they happen to be incapacitated or whatever. There are very special circumstances where, you can do that. But
as a whole,
almost a court order.
As a whole,
you can't. No,
as a whole, for example, a 16-year-old girl goes to doctor, I want breast enhancement or whatever it is, even regardless of any type of sexual health as a whole.
Heck no.
A minor cannot go to a doctor without parental consent and get surgery, especially life-changing surgery. There is a law in Washington, there are people, it just blows me away. They think that this is okay. Our guest this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri, Randy Tobler, hosts the Randy Tobler Show weekdays at 4 o'clock.
Randy, walk us through the Fox News story about, for what most folks know as RU-486, the abortion pill. What could potentially happen there? And there's a lot of confusion on behalf of people out there. This is not the morning after pill, is it?
No, this isn't the morning after pill. That's essentially one or other of the contraceptive hormones that you'll find in the standard birth control pill. That the closer they're taken to the time of intercourse, it's more likely to prevent a pregnancy. So mifepristone, RU-4086, as it was originally known, is one of a combination of pills that is the most effective in inducing a medical abortion, and that applies to early abortions in the early first trimester primarily. And the FDA had really liberalized that, being able to be sent by mail, and you could just order it and basically get a physician's order, but never have to be observed by a physician. Don't have very easy, loose restrictions. And many folks thought that could be dangerous because there's a lot of things that can happen in the wake of a medical abortion that need to be monitored and patients need to be aware of. So, of course, the Trump administration rolled that back, and then Biden wanted to re-expand it. Well, a federal judge in Louisiana said, hey, we're going to go back to the old rules and we're going to tighten this up again. And it was challenged, and that's why that ruling was made. Well, an appellate court has basically upheld most of that, saying that, you might be able to get it by telehealth, but it has to be taken, in the presence of a doc. In other words, just tightening it up. You have to have more oversight and more scrutiny, because this is not just like taking a Tylenol PM to get some sleep. There's potential ramifications with taking it, and patients need to know what to look for should there be a complication after a medical abortion. So in general, I think it was a good thing. It tightened the rules and maintained most of the restrictions that original judge had imparted. Now, here's the problem. In the meantime, the Supreme Court has said, hey, no matter what the judge or the appellate court says, we're going to let the loose rules, the Biden rules, apply. So pragmatically, it's Katie bar the door. It's pretty generally available, and nothing's going to change till the Supreme Court hears it, and I believe they've agreed to hear it.
All right, Randy Tobler, good friend of Wake Up Mid-Missouri. If you get a chance, please, if you haven't had a chance to listen yet, check out his show. He's on 4 to 6 here on the radio station. 30 seconds, Randy. Do you know what you're doing coming up this afternoon?
Yeah, we'll be talking, I think, with Susan Pendergrass from the Show Me Institute, if I'm not mistaken. Sometimes that changes up. And, of course, Jennifer Bukowski to weigh in on her take on Fannie Willis, Fulton County, Georgia, and the mess down there with the indictments.
Look forward to hearing you this afternoon at 4.
And thanks for the nice words, man. You're a great patient, because guess what? You didn't kick me in the teeth when I was trying to examine you. No, I'm just kidding.
Thank you. It's body of
Take
health,
care, brother.
direct primary.
OBGYN humor this morning.
Come on, guys. Leave me alone, man. All right, coming up, we are going to do What's Hot with Hannah.
Man, I wish we were in Ireland today.
Why do we wish we were in Ireland? That's coming up 5 minutes from now. Meanwhile,
I wish we were in Ireland.
I wish we were in Ireland.
Irish.
Took me a second.
Very good. We get it.
Jeez.
Blood. 5-ish, which means it's
7:25, barely.
Is that matching up with the time on your smartphone or in your car right now? I'm just curious. I completely missed the Hannah-ism a few minutes ago. Zoom.
Yeah, the tease that I did was Irish. We were all in Ireland right now. John, I'm pretty sure it even took him a second, which is unusual. John, you're supposed to be the sharp one of the bunch.
Oh, well.
That's how good the Hannah-isms are.
Sometimes so subtle.
You don't know when you get hit upside the head with a Hannah-ism.
Yeah, it took you a while. It's all right. I'll forgive you. But we're going to Ireland, and it's because there was a bank glitch with some ATMs. Did you see this story, Brandon?
Whoa.
Law enforcement observed that there was an unusually long line at several ATMs in Ireland around the Dublin area. And it's because the Bank of Ireland, which is a big deal in Ireland, go figure, they had a glitch with their app and with their ATMs. And the glitch was allowing folks to withdraw or transfer more money out of their account than they had in there. So folks with a low balance were able to transfer up to 1,000 euros, which is not quite 1,100 US dollars. They could transfer it to like a linked account that they had, and then they could go to the ATM and withdraw all of that money.
Almost kind of low-level form of shell companies, Marsh, kind of like the Bidens do. So you pay us this, China, and we're going to put it in this account, and then quickly we move it to another account. It kind of,
sort of.
Yeah, for sure.
Somebody posted about the glitch on Twitter or X, whatever we're calling it these days, and it got a lot of attention, and a lot of people caught on, and a lot of people took advantage of the glitch. It was fixed pretty quickly. The Bank of Ireland issued some of updates overnight, and it caused unforeseen issues.
I would imagine that's one of those things, like if you know it's happening, because you're gonna. I mean, there's no way. It's like trying to commit a lot of crimes anymore in public. There's a good chance you're going to get caught because of the prevalence of video feeds and stuff like that. With electronic transfers, with the exception of the Bidens, because they get special treatment, you're going to get caught, right?
Well, yeah, and the bank issued a statement, said, "We are aware that the technical issue meant some customers were able to withdraw or transfer funds above their normal limits. These transfers and withdrawals will be applied to customers' accounts today."
That sounds like it's more than a glitch. That's a problem.
And it also sounds like they're not just going to go, "Oh, our bad.
We got you. Don't worry about it."
No, they're not doing that. They're not doing that. They are coming after the folks who took advantage.
I wonder, and maybe some people did it accidentally, like, oh, yeah, I'm going to transfer some money over, and I thought I had that much, but I thought I had $13. I didn't know I only had $13.87 in my account. I'm going to go ahead and try to transfer that. I'm dumbfounded that people would try to get away with this kind of stuff anymore. There's another story. This dude, he's applying, he's looking for work. God bless him. Applies to the sheriff's department, and so they do a background check. The dude has search warrants.
Active?
Yeah.
Oh,
through that
buddy.
Sheriff. Wow. was there, August 19th, 1984. What was that day? Now, as a journalist, you always go into even if it's the president, and I'm speaking from a little bit of experience. I lived along the Gulf Coast when Barack Obama spent 2 days in Pensacola and Alabama, traveled with the president for 2 days, and is the president of the United States, like or dislike, as somebody who is representing a news organization and trying to bring a story to the public. You have to put kind of some of that stuff aside, but especially in retrospect, it's generally regarded Reagan was the best, greatest president in U.S. history. In retrospect, you think about your time there that day. What was that like, man?
Gosh, it's been so long ago, and he was kind of presidential stump speech and all that on the campaign trail. But Ronald Reagan was Ronald Reagan. I remember he had some of his Reaganisms he came up with when he was talking to Kit Bond, who was governor, and said, "Sweets to the sweet and ham to the ham." I think got him a pretty good laugh.
Man, 1980. It's August 19th, 1984. Halsworth was at the fair then too.
And ham to the ham. John's absolutely right. I think if you go back and look at his speech, and I pulled it up. I'm so glad you played that, Brandon. There are some references that obviously he talks about Governor Bond and stuff. You take a few things out like that. Basically, if you gave that speech today, probably 80% of that speech could be delivered today, and you would have no idea about the area. He's talking about Soviet trying to be aggressive. The Soviets, we know what they're doing. Former President Trump's talked about the Soviet Union. So is the current president, Joe Biden. But he also talked about droughts, and he talked about floods. And during his speech, John may remember this, there was actually two protesters that were, because he wanted to cut taxes. And these two guys, they were two men, started yelling. They were shouting. And President Reagan could have had them removed, but he did not. So you can kind of, I think on the YouTube, you can hear them. And they kept yelling when he wanted to cut taxes. And at one point, Reagan goes off script and said, "I'm going to raise his taxes." And the place went crazy.
Yeah.
He also ad-libbed. He took his coat off. It was so hot that day in the barn. And one other quick thing I remember about that, there was a young man from California, Missouri, that met the president. Young man, I think he was 9 years old. That young man, 50 years old, and just passed away, I believe, from cancer.
Darren text 874-9390. I was an exhibitor at the State Fair in 84. They pulled the presidential limo into our cattle barn. I got to shake the president's hand. How cool is that? Welcome to the show. It's Wake Up Mid-Missouri. That's Brian Halsworth.
It's good to see you.
There's Mr. Marsh.
Yes, indeed.
There's producer Hannah. Hello. We're trying to lower blood pressure this morning. 2-hour visit with the doctor yesterday's. Brandon, you gotta settle down. Wait till you hear the next bumper music we're gonna play out with. So we're doing bumper music to lower your blood pressure this morning. Stephanie Bell back in studio tomorrow. But right now, we find her at the State Fair. Big ham breakfast happening right now. Stephanie goes every year. And, Steph, I want to start here. We talk about the fair, carnival rides, and this and that, the corn dogs, and the concerts, and all this, and the big ham breakfast. But talk about it in your mind, some of the political implications and how this affects us. What comes out of the State Fair? What comes out of the ham breakfast?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've kind of speculated on who might be here and who's not going to be here. And I think, Missouri farmers across the state are such an important group. There are so many members of organizations like the Farm Bureau and the various trade associations, and they all come to the fair, and they're all here yesterday and today. And many of the families spend, a week or more here showing animals and participating in the other fair activities. So it's just, so politicians know that, right? That everyone is at the fair. And so all of the politicians, or many of them, show up. And so whether or not, sometimes you get people who might be running for office. And I think it's sometimes telling about who you're going to see in some races. Of course, we've already got a lot of folks announced, but there are some races I think we still expect some announcements. So I'm going to have my eyes peeled this morning, seeing who shows up.
Stephanie, great job covering the breakfast I mentioned in my story, 939theeagle.com and KWS. Senator Hawley is there. Senator Schmidt is there. Congressman Burleson is there. Congressman Jason Smith, Congressman Mark Alford, and Congressman Blaine Luetkemeyer. And I know Sam Graves is trying to get there as well. I want to ask you about from the Democrats' perspective. I don't know if Crystal Quaid is going to be there. My gut feeling is she will be, House Minority Leader from Springfield. But I would say that one of the keys for Democrats, especially they're hoping to get a lot of turnout with an abortion ballot issue, if they can cut into, because they've been just being destroyed basically, Democrats at the ballot box in rural Missouri. But if they can cut into that, perhaps it would give them a chance at a statewide election. Are you seeing any other Democrats? Are you seeing Quaid or anyone else?
I saw Maggie Nuremberg, who's running for state senate, and I saw a handful of Democrats, but not nearly as many as I had. I did not see Crystal Quaid there last night, and I don't think they have any chance to cut into the majority Republicans hold or any chance in any statewide. I will tell you, last night, Director Chin spoke, and I actually got a minute to speak with her. She said they're seeing record turnout just because obviously the fair, but also the weather's been so wonderful. But after he spoke, they introduced both Lieutenant Governor Kehoe and the governor, and both got roaring standing ovations from the crowd. I don't think you'd see that same thing with the Democrats.
Weather today, by the way, for the state fair, sunshine, maybe 85 degrees. It does not get much better than that. Stephanie Bell, part of Wake Up Mid-Missouri, is joining us here on the show this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Stephanie, talk to us. What are you hearing from the gathered crowd there about the election year and farm issues and all? There's a lot to talk about at the fair this year, isn't there?
There is. Obviously, drought is number one. I talked to some folks who were able to attend that big listening session on Monday with Congressman Alford. He came on our show and talked about it, and they said it was just a really great day, really appreciated the opportunity, and said there was a huge turnout from folks at the fair there to, talk about these issues. So still hearing a lot about the drought.
And it's interesting as we look forward, we talk about state fairs and the political implications and what happens there, especially like when we get into next year. And sometimes the timing of the fair, it is an incredible campaigning event. And then you look at when the primaries are going to be just before the fair. So it's always kind of interesting. Anything else you want to highlight on the fun side before we let you go, Steph Bell?
Well, it was neat hearing the open with Reagan. I don't think I'm going to see any presidential candidates today, unfortunately. I did bump into Senator Schmidt last night. Of course, he was up at the Iowa State Fair with the Trump group, and, they had a lot of presidential candidates. So it was interesting to hear his perspective on the Iowa State Fair. I hope one day Missouri will have a presidential candidate again appear. That would be really great.
We know you are super busy. We appreciate you taking time out of your day to be a part of your very own show here on the radio station, Stephanie. And by the way, you have a great day. We'll chat later, and we'll look forward next week. Stephanie Bell at the GOP presidential debate. 874-9390. Darren was at the State Fair 1984, got to shake Ronald Reagan's hand. Darren, welcome into the show. How did that unfold?
It was kind of an amazing experience. When we arrived, back then we arrived on a Thursday, we showed on a Saturday and left on a Sunday. That year they moved the Sale of Champions to Sunday when Reagan was supposed to come. There was a rumor that he was coming, but no one knew for sure. But when we were in our barn, there were Secret Service agents running around everywhere. They all had long sleeves, so they were easy to pick out. There was also a hotline to the White House in the barn, a red phone with buttons that were for different rooms in the White House.
Despite all the BS in the barn, we knew what was going on that day in 1984. And I want to ask you this because I kind of asked, I want to talk about this again a little bit, but Hausworth was at that state fair. John Marsh covered the president's visit. So at the time, you got to meet him. You got to shake Ronald Reagan's hand. Is it any? So we knew then, I think even in 84, this guy, he's an incredible president. History looks even more, looks better on that now. Is there a different perspective these years as you look back? I met Ronald Reagan. Is it more profound now than it was on August 19th, 1984?
I think so. Yeah. He was an amazing president. I was excited to meet him then, and when I look back now, it was even more of a great experience.
And we all appreciate you take time out of your day to share your story here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Darren. I appreciate that. I was talking about when Marsh covered Reagan. I was with Obama for 2 days during the Gulf Coast oil spill, and And obviously didn't agree with anything about Obama. And everybody knows how much I stood on my principles to the tune of several $1,000s when I dropped my health care. And we're trying to watch the blood pressure this morning. Direct orders from the doctor yesterday. Whenever Obama was there, but for 2 days, and you got to put that aside. It doesn't matter that I don't like you, or if I did like you. But here's the thing that struck me, and John and I were just covering this. As a journalist, you got to go and do this. And at the time, I was a journalist. I'm not a journalist today. I'm a talk show host. But there was a television reporter from a TV station in Mobile, Alabama, and he went and was standing by Obama, and he's like, "Hey, man, will you take my picture with the president?" And I looked at this guy, and I said, I get it's seldomly do you get to meet the president of the United States, but here you're supposed to be a journalist at a TV station, and you're getting awfully giddy about meeting a president. It didn't sit right with me, and I told him, no, thank you. Houseworth, any thoughts? 20 seconds.
I think not so much on the picture issue. I think the biggest thing about President Reagan is in 1980, young people have no idea. Before that election, rural Missouri was solidly Democratic. Yeah. All of it. I mean, all of it, with the exception of Greene County and all of southwest Missouri, a couple counties in southwest Missouri. Jerry Litton had died in a plane crash. That had a huge impact. Reagan changed it, and now rural Missouri is ruby red. But when I was growing up, entirely Democrat. People didn't even know what a Republican was. They had no idea.
That's right. Coming up, we are going to be doing, and that would be all except for this. What can we look forward to, man?
The Queen Bee and her bathroom.
The Queen Bee and her bathroom.
down 34.
Coming up at 8:25, we'll check out the morning bell just minutes before the stock market opens. We'll actually kind of look at your futures, and we are also going to look at, I'm giving Target some points this morning, plus a Missourian who says, hey, you know what? I'm willing to buy Budweiser, one of the biggest well-known brands out of our Show Me state. We're going to do that coming up at 8:25.
And that would be all, except for this.
Yes, indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, the queen bee and her bathroom chores. You know, celebrities, we've done the stories. They have some pretty interesting demands, but I guess if you were rich and famous, you probably would too. Arguably, some of them are just strange and weird and baffling, from musicians wanting puppies on the tour bus with people with certain names not being allowed for working for you. We all know the one about Van Halen and no brown M&Ms backstage. J-Lo's the one who asked for all white furniture and has refused to perform if that wasn't dealt with. Katy Perry gets out there with the flower demand. She likes to have white and purple hydrangeas, pink and white roses and peonies, absolutely no carnations, but strangely no mention of daisies, being Katy Perry. Joe Jonas from the Jonas Brothers wanted 12 puppies backstage.
Aww.
Beyonce, however, who comes to the Dome of the Americas in St. Louis on Monday, the Beehive comes to town. She's been taking her own toilet seats with her while on tour. And the front office says Beyonce is, quote, such an elite performer, she can literally request anything. Her team makes a great effort to ensure she has her own comforts and a personal toilet seat. Happens to be one, and now you know the rest of that story.
Every queen needs a throne.
There you go. She needs to remember what happened to Elvis on the throne, perhaps.
So my dad and his wife of 30 years, they were huge Neil Diamond fans. They would be almost comparable to what we call Swifties nowadays. But it was Neil Diamond. And so they'd heard like one of his things was, and I don't know how true this was, but they've told the story over the years that Neil Diamond, one of the things that he insisted upon in his writers, any staff, concert staff, whoever, do not talk to him. Apparently, apparently incredibly arrogant.
Anybody.
Yeah, anybody. And it was funny because it really changed my dad and his wife's, it really changed their opinion of Neil Diamond. They never went to a Neil Diamond concert again because what do we talk about with politicians? We talk about, Joe Biden, who comes out and lies and talks about, America is a country of honesty and of virtues. Joe Biden is a hypocrite. He is not an honest man. He has no virtues. In the hypocrisy, it turned my dad and his wife off so much they never went to another Neil Diamond concert ever again.
You ought to see the list of demands that Branden has hanging in the studio. You won't even enter the studio unless those demands have been met.
And Hail to the Chief is playing on the building monitors in the entire building.
Yes.
Do you think, I wonder if these are, and I don't know if it's true, but apparently the thing with Van Halen and the brown M&Ms or the brown M&Ms picked out was, and I don't know if it's true or not, just something I've heard, but a lot of these artists will put in some really weird stuff just to see if they're paying
with them.
Yeah, if they're paying attention. Oh, by the way, in the finish of that Neil Diamond story, Neil Diamond, this was at the old Kiel Center in St. Louis. And apparently Neil Diamond gets on an elevator, backstage elevator, to go to the stage. And this old gentleman who apparently had worked at the Kiel Center as the elevator operator for years said, "Good evening, Mr. Diamond. Welcome to St. Louis." That guy had been there for a long, long time. The guy was fired because he spoke to Neil Diamond. Do you think that female artists are more picky than the dude artists when it comes to writers, Hannah? Or am I just being?
It's possible.
Am I being sexist?
It's possible.
Am I making assumptions and stereotyping?
Yeah, but there's a good chance it might be correct.
But you're not pounding on the console, so it's all good.
Dang it! We're not a talk show that bangs on the desk. I've been doing this for years.
And we don't yell at
Ran
people
without
either.
yelling. And how many times I sat here and said, "Dang it, that's not what we do here." Well, I do it.
Awkward.
Coming up a little bit after 8 o'clock.
Snickers.
Driving real slow with the van window open and holding the Snickers bar out the window and going, "Hey, kid, you want a candy bar? Hey, kid, I lost my puppy. You want to help me go look at?" That is no different there, man. And the one thing you can say about Joe Biden, he is consistent. Now, obviously, it's not the first time that he's behaved that way. He said that yesterday, and it's stunning that people laugh and then clap about this guy. It's even stunning that he has any approval rating at all. And we share that again. We talk about, one of the things we can do, because we do. I get it, man. Everybody gets frustrated because you're looking at your bank account. You're looking at these social issues and things like that. People get frustrated. And then we turn on the cable news outlets and everybody's fighting and yelling and arguing and debating. I always think, is what I think, if we start to share some of these facts, like if you get into work this morning, you share that, this is a pretty consistent behavior besides the economy, besides the prices of gasoline. By the way, gas prices down 2 cents, down to $3.66 a gallon. There's good news. If we highlight these facts and quit yelling and getting angry at people, maybe things will affect some change. As a matter of fact, coming up in the Morning Bell, business news, little twist, only Stephanie can give you 825. I'm going to give Target, I'm going to give them some points this morning. Did you see the financial numbers for the month of June, Pride Month for Target, John?
Not a very month to be proud of.
Absolutely. But I'm going to give them some points, and I'll tell you why. Coming up in the Morning Bell, we're going to do that at 825. 3 presidential contenders on the GOP side are now polling in double digits fairly consistently, besides Trump, besides DeSantis. Who's the third one? One of the things we are covering this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. I am Branden Rathert. There is producer Hannah.
Hello.
My name is, I already did that. John Marsh. Did I already introduce myself? There's John Marsh.
Good morning.
Brian Hausworth is here.
It's good to see you.
Hannah, let me ask you this. I always appreciate your honesty, and I listen to you.
Sometimes.
Do I sound slower and quieter? Do I sound, because we're trying to calm things down. 2-hour visit with the doctor yesterday said you got to settle down. Your blood pressure's getting out of hand. And this is after 2 years of being off, 3 years almost being off blood pressure meds, all that crap when I quit drinking. Do I sound sleep? Because I feel like I'm just, I feel in trying to calm down and not bang on the desk and talk about the president and the financial situation and blah, blah, blah. I feel like I feel like Sleepy Joe. Do I sound sleepy?
No worse than normal.
Oh, Hannah. All right.
I think you sound good. I do think blood pressure is a very important thing, and there's nothing wrong with being on it. You just make sure there's no side effects.
Marsh has shared you take meds, huh?
Yep.
And I did for a lot of years, and I quit drinking. And guess what? I got off all those meds I had been taking, antidepressants and blood pressure meds and all that. I quit drinking. Guess what else I quit doing? I quit doing all those other meds.
Wow.
Should you have done that, though?
Well, that's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
My blood pressure was incredible, but I was taking steps to make sure it was under control, and that was exercising almost every single day, being active, eating the right foods. And for the past I guess 5 weeks now, I haven't been able to go to the gym because now I got shoulder issues. I got to go do physical therapy.
You're falling apart.
I know it. So it's health
understand.
issues. And as a dude, man, seriously, especially the blood pressure, I think anybody will tell you, man, if you have blood pressure issues, you got to get those under control because that's one of the things that can jack you up most later in life. Let's bring in Cousin Andy, host sports show weekdays.
How are we going to segue into that one?
Andy, how old are you, bud?
I don't even know at this point, man. What is going on?
I'm telling you.
I'm almost 30.
Right?
I'm almost 30. That's the answer.
There you go. The point of the story, Cousin Andy, is this is what you have to look forward to if you do not take care of yourself. Blood pressure, and then talking real quietly on your afternoon show on KTGR because your doctor's saying, dude, you got to settle down. And I know you got a lot of stressors in life. Brand new dad. Want to see how that's going. Andy Humphrey joining us this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri, hosting an afternoon show on our sports talk station, KTGR. It is a really, really good show, by the way, because it's not just sports and stuff like that. There's some lifestyle stuff in there. So the NIL stuff, and I have two takes on this, Andy. Number one, listen, if I want to go and hire the fry cook from Raising Cane's restaurant, who, by the way, 15% of profits today from Raising Cane's going to help folks in Hawaii. If I want to hire the fry cook at Raising Cane's to be a spokesman for my business, I should hire them. It does not matter. I hire anybody I want. That's the freedom I have. But what I don't like, Andy, is how closely this is tied in with recruitment now at schools. Can you kind of bottom line? And by the way, and I'm okay with it when it benefits my Mizzou football team as we get ready for the Zimmer Tiger tailgates, and it is benefiting Mizzou right now. Kind of bottom line this NIL stuff for us, first of all.
Well, yeah, it definitely is being used as a recruiting tool. They'll say that it's not. Yep. That's never what what they say is never going to actually be the truth most of the time. But yeah, I squarely put this, though, not on the school, not necessarily on individual schools, not on players, not on coaches. I put it on the NCAA for not really having a plan for implementing this. It was about 2 years ago now when they started to allow athletes to make their own money, essentially, benefit off their name, image, and likeness. And when they released those guidelines, it was pretty much open season, and it almost still is. And it's allowing all of these different state governments to make their own rules, essentially, and maybe even make them a little bit more relaxed, which is kind of what I think Missouri has done over the last couple of years to make it more enticing for some of these recruits to go to some of the schools that those states have a home for. And so I think it's really just it has been kind of crazy how it's blown up the last couple of years. But I mean, if you're wanting to fix the whole NIL is being used as recruiting tool problem and it's starting to get out of control, well, that goes back to 2 years ago when the NCAA didn't have a clear plan of implementing it and didn't put guardrails in place. And now they're trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube to walk back what has already been considered normal across the country. And so I just think they made their own bed with this, and this is kind of the new world of college sports at the moment.
Andy, great job kind of explaining this. I did cover the bill signing ceremony at Mizzou at the Fro Field in Columbia. I've linked to the bill for those of you, KWS.com, 939theeagle.com. It's 29 pages. I think it's 9 or 10 down there. I got to tell you, folks, I've read the bill. You cannot understand what this means unless you're an attorney. And Eli Drinkwitz even joked about the attorneys. A civilian cannot understand this, but I'm told it deals basically with workforce development in recruiting there. I did ask President Choi, and he said, Andy, this will help Mizzou win championships. He didn't specify SEC or national championships. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in the bill that isn't necessarily pertaining to NIL. I think it's almost like one of the segments of the bill. Correct. But you're right, a lot of it is pertaining to workforce development and things like that. But it's very clear that it was formed to allow things to get a little bit looser in Missouri when it comes to NIL. Essentially, the big part of the bill that everybody's gravitating towards is now, once this goes into effect August 28th, in-state high school kids can now earn NIL money sooner if they attend an in-state school versus if they went out of state. So normally you have to wait until you're actually physically on campus before you start earning NIL money as an NCAA athlete. But this bill essentially allows you to get that money a little bit sooner. It allows in-state kids, they sign with an in-state college here in Missouri, to get that money once they sign their national letter of intent, which you can do as early as this year. It's December 20th. Usually it's about mid-December or so. And there's even a little footnote in the bill that says you can also just sign another document that says you're going to a school and you can earn NIL money there too. And people are interpreting that saying, well, maybe you can just sign a different document that says you're going to Mizzou and then you start earning it as early as September. So, I mean, it's allowing these kids to kind of rethink like, well, I can get this money a little bit sooner than I would if I would go to a bigger school like Georgia or, Alabama, Oklahoma, one of those other schools out there. And so that's why it was kind of being interpreted over the last few weeks or so as, wow, this is much more of a game changer than we maybe thought it was when it was being passed through the legislature this session.
All right. By the way, you get points for putting the toothpaste back in the tube. Our guest, cousin Andy Humphrey, hosts the afternoon sports show on our sister station, KTGR.
Andy, maybe a quick response. I mean, we think back a year or so ago to Luther Burden III, who was being courted by the Tide and the Georgia Bulldogs and all. Now he's got his hot chips at Schnucks, and he's on the billboards for emos. This factored into him coming here before it was all on the dotted line, didn't it?
No question. I mean, Mizzou found a way, and at least folks around Mizzou found a way to make it a lot more enticing for those in-state kids, whether it's St. Louis or Kansas City or anywhere else in the state, to show that they can earn maybe a little bit more money here than they would somewhere else. But you talk about Luther Burden. I mean, he signed on with Mizzou before they had their updates to the NIL bill, because that was back in the fall of 2021 when he, verbally committed to Mizzou and eventually signed. That was just, with the blanket, let's just make NIL legislation legal. And then in the last couple of years, Missouri has provided updates to that law to make it even more enticing. And I think you saw the effects of that earlier this week when Williams Nwaneri, that five-star defensive lineman out of the Kansas City area, verbally committed to Mizzou on Monday. And so more and more we're seeing state lawmakers try to make this a little bit simpler on, high school kids and coaches and really everybody involved. And look, until the NCAA actually gets some chops with this sort of thing, that every state legislature is going to try and do whatever they can to get an edge.
10 seconds, Andy. 2 reasons. How on earth, and this is huge, Williams Nwaneri, defensive lineman who's going to be playing at Mizzou as we get ready for our Zimmer Tiger tailgates coming up this football season. 10 seconds. How on earth did Mizzou get Williams Nwaneri?
I think it's a combination of that NIL legislation, the fact that they're updating the law, but I don't think you discount the fact that Eli Drinkwitz is still a very good recruiter. He just has to make sure that he shows the results on the field the next season or two if he wants to keep that going, essentially.
Andy Humphrey, check him out this afternoon, KTGR. We appreciate you, and congrats on the new baby.
Hey, appreciate it, guys. Thanks.
Coming up, Morning Bell, 8:25, Business News, a little twist only Steph can give you. Target's earning reportings for June. Good morning. It's 8:25. Time for the Morning Bell. Business news, little twist only Stephanie Bell can give you. We'll check out your futures here real quick. But I do want to start with this meeting. We'll check your futures just minutes here before the opening bell. Target earnings. You see these yesterday, Marsh?
Yeah, not a good stock to have in your portfolio right now.
No, it's not, and it's directly related to June. Remember the whole thing with Pride Month? People are taking their little kids in the store, and they're seeing just this really freaked out type of clothing, and it was, well, it's just conservatives that are upset, and why don't you accept this? Here's what Target says. Target is almost, and this is why I'm giving Target some points this morning. Target is saying, in effect, we messed up. They're saying that. And I don't know if you've seen this, John, but they're doing what Budweiser has failed to do. They're taking ownership of their problem. Now, I'll mention this because I thought this was kind of interesting, too. Is, by the way, futures all in the green this morning, just minutes before the opening bell. Target, and I appreciate them. They're like, yeah, man, being woke, we got to wake up because it took a hit to the point. And listen, you take a hit like that, when you're a publicly traded company, you answer to people, don't you? It's not just like, well, we lost money.
Like 5% last quarter.
Yeah, that's not how it works. And I thought this was really interesting. So, I like to watch how these news, because I like to present examples of media bias and not just complain about it. As I'm looking at monitoring all these news sites yesterday, whether it's New York Times, whoever it was, even the British Broadcasting Corporation, the headline says, because they're talking, this was the statement from Target. They were saying, hey, because of June Pride Month, our sales took a hit. We have millionaire and billionaire investors, okay, that believed in our company. They lost a lot of money. That when people start losing money, that's some pretty serious stuff.
Yeah, we talk about, 5% loss in sales, but their stock value fell off 25% or something?
It is bad. It really is. So these woke businesses are going, man, we got to wake up. Unlike Budweiser, as a matter of fact, there's a famous Missourian who's saying, man, I'll come back and buy Budweiser, Billy Bush. And here's the thing, even there was an analyst yesterday who, listen, we were trying to poke in a little bit, earnings report from Budweiser. And again, they're saying, they're not saying, listen, we know sales continue to drop, and they have we're coming up on half of the year now, half of the calendar year they've taken a hit because when they teamed up with that dude that thinks he's a chick and he's just not, and that people buy into that, it's just mind-boggling. Billy Bush said, I'll buy Budweiser back. And in these earnings report, they're still, it's
and
like,
he meant it.
in like the closest parking lot and go back and forth. It was just such a smooth and easy process. And if I did ever have trouble, I always had someone that could help.
That young lady's name is Campbell Kessler. She's an incoming freshman at Mizzou, and she's chatting with her buds over there at ABC 17. She sounds very excited to be starting college.
Bless her heart.
Right? There's expectations, and then there's reality. Bless her heart. She's all excited. But I remember my first day at Southeast Missouri State after hitting on somebody who turns out happened to be the cousin of a girl I was already dating from Sykeston after I got over.
Wait. You were dating someone and actively hitting on other girls?
It was the 90s, Hannah. I was a kid.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah, so the first no kidding, man. First girl, we're talking, and I start to, getting, and we talk. Comes out she was cousins with the gal I'd been dating from Sykeston. I don't behave that way anymore. I quit doing that about 6 weeks ago. And 3 years. Well, I haven't behaved that way in a long,
Keep talking, Rathert. Keep talking.
Time. I was a kid. Let's move forward. Welcome into the
Feel your blood pressure getting up there.
Trying to watch my blood pressure today. And I was, Randy Tobler, host of the Tobler Show. He's a doctor, and that's not germane to what he does here on the show. But he has this Body of Health direct primary care clinic. I don't mean to go on and give him gratuitous plugs. My point, trying to say this is, especially us older guys, we get older, and I know sometimes we can be prideful and not take care of our health. And I have a doctor, Timothy Sanssouci, and I had some issues, and I wanted a second opinion. And I went to Body of Health, which is Randy Tobler. I feel like I need to disclose that. And I say it not to plug him or the business, but the importance of being an advocate for your own health, especially, man, as we get older. We got to take care of ourselves. And anyhow, the blood pressure. He said, quit whining on the show. And I know sometimes why I get to sounding like Jerry Seinfeld or the stereotypical talk show host that I always rail against. What do I do? What do I do all the time, Hannah?
You always say that we don't sit here and pound our fist on the desk for 3 hours and blah, 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 blah.
And then I do it sometimes.
Yes.
So trying to back off of that. And so we've been playing like some of the bumper music we've been playing this morning. Like
it's been real zen.
Yeah, it has been kind of mellow.
Yeah, Stairway to Heaven, the Jack from AC/DC,
Kansas,
Dust in the Wind. Ted, one of our listeners, great sense of humor via text. Wait till you hear his suggestion. We're going to get into that coming up just a few minutes from now. Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Steph is back in studio tomorrow. She's at the Big Ham Breakfast State Fair. Next week, she's at the GOP debate. Fox, obviously, they're televising it. Stephanie's going to be there. Reports on that. She's back in tomorrow. There's producer Hannah.
Hello.
That's Marsh.
Good morning.
My name is Branden. Something we can do for you. 874-9390, 874-9390. I do like the enthusiasm from that college student, because I remember first time I got excited my first day at Southeast Missouri State because I should not have been in college. I was a high school dropout, and that was something I never admitted until I think it was Dr. Alexander Cartwright, former bigwig at Mizzou, sat in this studio and told us, and we were shocked when he told us that he did not finish high school. But when he said that, it kind of made it okay for me, to be honest about that. So I never expected to be in college. And then all of a sudden one day after I took my GED and got almost a perfect score, my score was high enough, I got scholarship money to pay for my way to go through school. So I worked for that. So I was super excited. But you remember that first day of school. What was your first day of college like, Hannah?
Well, so move-in day at Mizzou, it's such a well-oiled machine. It's like you go, you check in at the Hearn Center, you get all your information. They give you a time slot that you're supposed to move into your room in. They have so many volunteers waiting there with these giant carts, and you pull up to the curb, you throw all your stuff in the carts, they take it up to your room, dump it in there, and it's up to you to straighten your room out after that. But it is, for as many students as they had moving in all at once, we were shocked at how well-oiled and organized it was.
And I'm wondering, John, between we think about like William Woods, Lincoln University, 500 new students moving in this year, and Westminster Stevens College, and I'm thinking Truman State and State Fair Community College, Columbia College, State Tech, Central Methodist, Moberly Area Community College, Mizzou. I bet we got to have at least 50,000 college students in mid-Missouri.
Well, most years Mizzou's anywhere between 26, 27, 30,000 at Mizzou alone. Then you're talking schools like, William Woods and Lynn State. There's another 5,000 students among them. So if we're not up to 50,000, I bet we're darn close.
Speaking of state tech, so Rankin is a competing technical school that is being built in Ashland. It should be opening pretty soon, right?
Yeah.
Anybody noticed the big old state tech billboard that was purchased?
I have not.
Right in front of where they're building Rankin.
I haven't spotted that one. Wow.
It's been there for a while, and I actually haven't looked for it in a couple weeks, so hopefully it's still there. But I thought that was a great move. I don't know if the billboard was there first or if, the school, if Rankin was there first, but it cracks me up every time. Just big old state tech billboard right in front of Rankin Tech.
That's a good troll.
It is.
Actually, I kind of dig that. So obviously, there's more talk as we're learning this morning. Who's been one of the biggest proponents of just forgiving student debt, taking your taxpayer dollars, money out of your wallet to go pay for kids who got student loans and said they would pay the money back. And we never knock Hannah on this. We're not.
Oh, whatever.
But we've learned this morning. We've known for a long time. People like AOC. She was the biggest proponent of that while she was carrying $50,000 in student debt, which blows me away. And there's still efforts. The Biden campaign as a point of campaigning amidst dismal polling numbers that get worse among a worse and even worsening economy. They continue. Well, we got to get these kids to vote for us. How do we do it? Let's give them money, i.e., by paying off their student loans. An interesting take, though, when it comes to student loans.
Yeah, I was just scrolling through Twitter this morning and saw this. I don't recognize the Twitter user's name or any of their credentials in their bio, but a lady named Melanie tweeted, if your job requires a college degree, you should be able to write off your student loan payments as a business expense the way CEOs write off their private jets and yachts for their jobs, which require neither of those things.
So if I'm applying for a job...
I think this is genius. Yeah, good luck is what John said.
It's making me think, though.
Right.
And I'm trying to reason it out. It's going to take me a couple of weeks. But initially, I'm like, okay, if a qualification for...
Condition of employment, right?
That's right. Condition of employment is you have to have this. Then can I write that off?
Makes you think.
Let's get our tax accountant on the line and see what he says.
Unfortunately, I don't think I can use this for my agriculture degree, but maybe it can help someone else.
It's a nice try. You know who I really feel bad for? Parents buying back-to-school supplies. My goodness, like on the streets, people talking to the tune of and I'm not talking new clothes and new shoes. I'm talking about when these public schools, they give you a list like, hey, you got to buy this, and they are so incredibly specific about what you got to buy. And for a lot of people, it's not an easy thing. It's not. I mean, I think there was a retirement home in Columbia last week. Like they did a bake sale, a good old fashioned bake sale at a retirement home, because they're trying to help parents because it's such an enormous cost. When you're trying to do these things, and I feel really, really bad for parents, and I feel bad for my kid and my daughter-in-law. Now, I don't feel bad enough that I'm sending them money to buy the grandkids back to school supplies because they gotta experience this,
I feel bad for you, but not bad enough to help you.
It's an opportunity to learn.
That's right. Experience is the best teacher. That's what my dad always told me.
Your grandkids have been in school for a couple years, though. Don't you think your kid has learned?
God, I hope so. I do remember, and maybe other folks have had this experience too. But when your kids turn into teens, especially if you're growing up in a divorced home or whatever, so it's different because you're not with your kid every night. So there's phone calls and all that. As my kid got older. And he would call like in his late teens and early 20s. It was always really cool because teenagers don't always call their parent. Now, a lot of teenagers do still have really, really close relationships with their parents, and I appreciate that. And my kid, he would call me all the time, and whenever I'd see his numbers show up on my cell, I would light up my heart, I would smile, and oh God, it's Trevor, and we would talk, and then after about 10, 15 minutes, I'd be like, okay, well, hey, by the way, can you send?
I have had to do that to my parents or grandparents, and it feels terrible.
Do you still do the chat for 5 or 10 minutes and do the ask at the end of the conversation?
No, I think anymore it's just a text because it feels worse to pretend like you're calling for another reason.
But I'll never forget the day. I know exactly where I was. I was in Pensacola, I-10 Viaduct, and my kid called me, and I'm sitting there for 10 minutes going, because I'm waiting. I'm waiting for the ask. And he never asked, and he hung up, and he said, I love you. And since then, he's never asked for money again. Coming up, we're going to be doing some leftovers. Glenn Beck.
This is huge.
What is huge? We're going to do that in.
Oh God.
Okay, 2 things on that. Number 1, what is huge? Number 2, when a dude tells you it's huge, you got to take it, I think, sometimes with a grain of salt. Now I appreciate Tad's sense of humor this morning via text. 874-9390. Our bumper music has been, Dust in the Wind, Stairway to Heaven, a little bit slower this morning for blood pressure reasons. John Marsh has shared he's on blood pressure meds. Hannah's, planning for a wedding, had a major wedding snafu yesterday that we're going to cover tomorrow.
She may need some blood pressure meds.
She might. So we've been trying to do appropriate music to settle us down a little bit. Todd texted and say, hey, how about, is it drowning pool? Let the bodies hit the floor? And I'm like, yeah, okay, let's check it out.
Enjoy.
So the Beck thing, who's on one of our stations after the Nolan show, Glenn Beck, he says this is a big deal. Last I checked the latest email that I got from him this morning. So his podcast has been pulled from Apple Podcasts, and he's like, hey, why? And apparently he's getting the support from supporters and even some senators, and it's kind of a big deal because we think about this raid on this newspaper in Kansas, police raiding them because small town politics or big time politics like it's Beck, or big time politics when the Department of Justice and people in elected positions go after somebody like Trump. You can see how that stuff matters. Real quickly in leftovers, before I forget this, I want to share a quick text from Richard, 874-9390. He says, I started college when my son started kindergarten. We both graduated the same year. My son graduated high school. My 4-year degree took 13 years of night school because I worked full-time and raised a family. Richard, good on you. And Erica, Hannah brought up the point, hey, if part of you apply for a job and part of that, the qualification for the job, you have to have a college degree, shouldn't you be able to write that off? And Erica says, hairstylists should be able to write off their schooling because without it, we couldn't do our jobs at all because they have to get licensed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talks about doctors, too.
Yeah. We are allowed to write off our license fees, mileage, everything we use at our jobs that we have to use for our jobs. Kind of interesting. And then apparently some other old dudes like me and John sharing, take your blood pressure meds, do whatever it takes to take care of your blood pressure. Marsh, what you got for... Sorry, I didn't mean to include you in the old guy chat. What do you have? What do you have for leftovers?
Hey, federal court dismissed charges against that Versailles man who was being prosecuted for being at the protests at the Capitol back in January 6, 2021, as Brandon likes to say, Matthew Loganville. So they threw his case out. He's exonerated. And there was a guy from Centralia who did plead guilty to bringing a gun on the Capitol grounds. But the guy from Versailles acquitted.
What was the story where the guy had to be hospitalized in the workplace, like some chemicals or something in the workplace?
Oh, here in that Jefferson City story that we had, wasn't, I don't think it was a workplace. It kind of read like it was a residence and mixed some sort of chemicals together, got sick and had to go to the hospital.
Now, that's how I've mixed chemicals before and have also ended up hospitalized. Again, I don't behave that way anymore.
Moving on.
Yeah, moving on. Yeah. Hopefully that dude is going to be okay. The other thing is we get ready for the Gary Nolan show, which happens to be my dad's favorite show. Tomorrow, we do Feel Good Fridays. We cover the big stories for you. We make sure you know what's going on, but we try to chill out a little bit as we've been trying to do here all day long. We're doing that on a Feel Good Friday. Stephanie Bell is also going to be here, and we try to highlight some of the feel good stories in the news. GOP polling numbers. So polls for what they are worth. We're a year away from the primary. 3 candidates on the GOP side polling in double digits. Trump, of course. DeSantis, who I liked from the get-go. His campaign had been falling on its face. The third candidate who is now consistently polling in double digits. There's only one. It's not Haley. No, it's not Tim Scott.
It's not the former vice president.
By the way, I think so. I saw 2 polls yesterday. Mike Pence is trailing the mayor of North Dakota. Of course, the mayor of the state of North Dakota, Doug Burgum.
Doug.
There's one presidential candidate I get text from. You know who it is? Doug.
Is it Doug Burgum?
It's Doug. And I don't know why. I don't get text updates from Tim Scott, Trump, DeSantis. I don't know why. I signed up for text.
Because you got the gift card.
Yeah.